Alright guys, so if we have a look now, we've got our servo testing circuit together. I've got my first one that I need to test, our little servo here, and notice that I'm using a power source at 6 volts to be able to power my Arduino, or power the servo to be honest, because our Arduino doesn't have the current capacity to be able to power this guy effectively. So we use an external power source to be able to power our servo. So what you'll notice here is I've got my wires. I've just used a little bit of tape wrapped around in a dot to put the signal. So notice that I've got that signal wire coming from D3, which is I've labeled here. And then my power and ground are connected through that capacitor. So I've got those in the same order that you see on our servos. So the orange is our signal wire, red is power, black is ground. So if you don't connect those correctly and through accurately here, they are not going to work. So now that I've got that set up there, I'm able to start doing my testing. So the one that I've shown and I've got drawn up here is a really super simple one that all it allows me to do is it's going to go from, if you have a look at what it's saying, it says start, PWM, you can see over here, so number 3, PWM is set to 0, delay for half a second, go to 180, so rotate to the other side, delay for half a second, and then go to 90 and stop. So this one is the super simple one, that the absolute most basic, that I could even ignore having the potentiometer on there and just do that so that I can get it to the right spot when we get to the meArm and construction of that. So if I reset that, he'll go half, and then to the middle and stop. So depending on the information that we've got, so if I come back over here and have a look at our meArm instructions, we can see we need to test and calibrate the servo motors. That's what we're doing here. And it's going to be problematic if we don't. So we need 2 set up like the one that I've just done. You're going to need another one over here. So what I would do for the next one is, if I had it sitting over on the 90 degree that side, I'm going to check him again. So then he would go that way, and then back to the middle there. So that gives me the one, so I'd be able to then put the little screw in the middle, and then he's ready to go. That last one there, I would need to then swap over to the other little arm. And so this would obviously be for each separate servos, but I'm just demoing on the one. So you grab one of the long arms, and if you put it on, so I'm just going to put it on skew for the moment, I'd reset it. Then he goes 1, 2, 3. So if I know that that is the end 90 degree, I saw it go all the way through range, so then that's going to be good. So if he's centered, and now it's pretty close, just because where those little switches are, but then if I check it once more, you can see he jumps, goes, and then he's back to that center point. So that's how we need to go through and check that I've got my 4 servos set up the way that it's asked on here. And you can see it's got the baby little one through the middle to be able to attach. So that's our servos ready to go. The other thing I wanted to show you over here was, instead of using just the straightforward one, I want to be able to show you how we could use that potentiometer as well. But for this one, I'm going to ignore this, and I'm just going to use the simulate over here. So what you've noticed already on mine is, to connect to my device, I need to come up to the emulator tab and go to this select device. Now, because it's connected, it should give me the option, and he's not going to let me hide that for the moment. Let's just turn him off for the moment. And if we go through, we've got the nano, and then when we go to select our port, we can choose that and OK. So then when I'm ready to be able to connect and get him to actually work in real life, I can then go connect to a device. But at the moment, I'm just going to simulate. So generally we can't have more than the 2 things here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Shift and select all of those guys, and I'm going to delete them out because I don't want those. So what I need to do here is I'm going to change that output. So I said I had D3 attached. I need to change that to make sure it's a PWM. So there's my output, and you can see it goes from 0 to 255. Now the other input I'm going to use is down here, is my analog, and I'm going to call that my, so I'm going to rename him, turn off the simulating for a second, turn him off, and that's going to be my potentiometer. Okay, you don't have to rename it, but when we've got lots of things, it makes life easier. And same deal, he seems to have jumped off our PWM again. And I'm going to rename him, and that's going to be my servo. Okay, so they're the two that I'm using. Fantastic. Now I'm going to start building out my my flow chart to be able to control it. So I've got my input here at A0, and I've got my output here at D3. So I've connected and lined up my device. I could do this without a device selected, but then I'll need to select my device through the emulator and then connect to it when I actually test it in real life. But I can do a lot of this just on the app. So I'm going to jump over to flowchart, and we can see I've got start, stop, subroutine, delay, decision, output, and let. So the ones that I'm going to be using here, I've already got my start button here, which I've dragged in. If I double click on that, I can always rename it. So that's for subroutines. We're going to ignore those for the moment. So I've got my start happening here. The next thing I'm going to do in this case is I need to be able to get this value. So if I have that at 1023, this should be at 180. If it's at half, at 512, this should be at 90. So I need to do a little bit of math to be able to calculate that out. So the way I do that is if I had 1024, whatever value here, I'm going to divide that by 1024, which will give me a decimal. So if I had 512 divided by 1024, it's going to be 0.5. Then I times that by the 180 that this could be, and it's going to give me my value. Now, to shortcut the process in this one, what I want to do is I'm going to put those two together, which actually becomes 5.688. So I'm going to do a let in this one. So this is where we can create a variable. So I'm going to create a variable. It's just called A in this case. And I want to take my analog, no, not analog one, on my potentiometer. And I want to divide that by a number. And it's 5.688. So I'm going to save that. And that's ready to go. What I need to do now is I need to make that an output. So I'm going to grab my output, and if I drag it on a box, it will then attach it through, and then you can see I've got my servo there, and I'm going to set that to being value A. So whatever value A gets changed to is going to become the output of our servo. Now, because this actually has to take some time, we need a delay. The computer works much faster than us. So I'm going to put in 50 millisecond for the moment. You can always adjust that. Now, if I wanted that just to run once, all I would do is I would hit a stop, and that would run once, and that's finished, which is what I had for the other setup. But in this case, what I want to do is I actually want this to loop continuously. So I'm going to grab that bottom little dot, bring that around, and now that's set up so that it's going to continually just check what potentiometer A is doing. It's going to then write that into servo 3 and then wait half a second and repeat. So if I go and simulate that now, as I move this, we will see my servo adjusting once I start playing it. So I go back to my emulator, I'm in the simulating mode and I hit play, and we can see he's running through and checking that. If I bring him down there, he should now adjust. Now if I speed that up a little bit, it will start running a bit smoother, and we can see that adjustment. So if I bring it all the way up, he goes to 180. And I made a mistake in setting this one because I didn't want it as a PWM. I need that as a servo. So we're going to come back over here, change that to servo. There he is. And now he goes from 0 to 180. So if we try that again, oh, and I need to adjust him now because I changed that name. So if you change names of something, it will need to redo the output, which is okay. So let's try that once more. So now he's running through. I move that up. He's good. I move him right down. He goes down. And then we've got a nice little play for that one.